Hi everyone, welcome to the episode 4 of the AI Pulse. Today I have with me Vishal Sunil. Welcome Vishal.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Vishal is Forbes 30 under 30 Asia. He is the top 100 AWS and Your Story AI leaders in India, serial entrepreneur. We have been working with him for many years now, previously as co-founder and CTO of Rocket Learning. And now he has founded a new venture called Gintic, which is an agentic AI workforce for the enterprise back office. So once again, welcome Vishal.
Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, very excited to chat with you.
So Vishal, given your kind of role in agentic AI, I mean, you have started a company.
Yeah.
Before that, in Rocket Learning, we have worked on a lot of agentic AI use cases as well. Um, First, let's talk about some of the recent things that have happened, right? Anthropic released Claude and some of the functionalities that wiped off, I think billions of dollars
Right.
in market valuation for some of the SaaS companies.
Right.
What do you make of it? Is it market overreaction? Is it something that you feel is structurally, fundamentally, something has changed that's going to remain that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like the first days of a new operating system, right? Like if you had Microsoft or Excel coming through, in the '94 and XP days. I think we're going through a moment like that right now in the software world. And you've been through a lot of these cycles yourself, and there's a little bit cyclic, but it's also fundamental shift, maybe in the types of roles that are going to be there and the types of roles software can play in your enterprise, right? So I think no longer will you get by just being a filing cabinet or a digital filing cabinet for an enterprise, right? I think now the bars that sort of software and enterprise agentic AI also need to set is sort of to own outcomes and solve real business problems rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to structure your data and that's where I'm going to stop, right? So it will fundamentally change the value propositions, but I don't think software is dead just yet.
Correct. I mean, if I think of the 2001 crash, the dot-com crash, and the 2008-9 financial crash, I remember that Bank of America was $1, right? And I remember still my manager at that time saying that this is the best buying opportunity of your life.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I was scared for my own job.
Sure.
The market, it looked like everything has changed. Nothing will be the same forever. Large banks might not exist, right? You have all these fears.
Yeah.
I feel that, do you feel that the current market correction, especially in the SaaS, is an overcorrection, is a good buying opportunity, right? And that the SaaS player will probably come back to where they were, or you feel that this is the right valuation for the SaaS? SaaS is kind of going to decline.
I think as with every one of these crises, there'll be winners and losers, right? So it's not that I think you still have to pick the right winners. I don't think it's a matter of just putting it in an Nvidia and saying that's where I end. That's where all the value is going to be concentrated. But I do think, for example, that this might be a little bit different, right? In a lot of ways, those were huge problems in systems, right? Over-evaluation bubbles, a lot of the things that you're talking about, right? Whereas now I'm really waking up every day and I'm saying, what is the future going to be for, maybe our children, right? And what is the job market that they're going to come into, right? I don't think the skills that you're learning today at school and the sort of knowledge-based economy that's there right now is going to survive the AI future. Right. So fundamentally, we are going to be seeing a huge layer of upskilling and reskilling that is required, right, for this. And similarly, analogous for companies, right? So as I was mentioning, I don't think that SaaS as we know it is going to be there, but also that some of the entrenched SaaS players do have an opportunity, can have a first crack at being, adapting to this AI world, but only those who adapt really quickly and adopt an AI native perspective on how to solve the problem, only those people are going to, come out of this better off, like your Bank of America.
Yes, correct. I also feel that what usually happens is, and I kind of give this example that um, earlier you would have a weaver
Sure.
weave the cloth by hand,
Right.
right? And so in a day, maybe he can weave 1 foot or 2 foot of a cloth, right? And so uh, those jobs of weaving, for example, got displaced with automation, where you can weave the garment automatically, right? And that happened. But then also what happened is the cost of garment went down drastically.
Right.
So in the earlier days, where an entire human might own 5 or 6 pieces of garment in his entire adult life, right, and they would kind of restitch and just keep wearing. I mean, today you could easily, in a week, people would buy that, right? And I think our parent generation probably had maybe 2 or 3 garments or 5 garments a year,
Sure.
and we are now at 5 garments a week kind of time frame, right? And so the actual number of people working in the garment industry hasn't changed.
Right.
The roles have changed.
Sure.
But the actual garment industry has grown because the cost of garment has come down.
Absolutely.
And I feel the same with software, that when the software is automated and you have even a small kirana store guy,
right,
able to now he's the fastest for me because he's right below my apartment.
Correct.
But I don't have the convenience of ordering and paying via UPI and this and that, because I have to call, and then sometimes his phone is busy and all that, right? And so I prefer a Swiggy or a Blinkit, right? But I think when he also can make an app.
Sure.
And I have a Kirana app as well, and I know it's going to be much faster and kind of more relationship that I have with him. Maybe the number of software pieces will increase, and thus the need for software guys to run and maintain those things. So software is probably there to stay for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think my existential fear in this, and I'm very paranoid, is, let's say, OpenAI comes up with a super app, right? OpenAI becomes that super app. ChatGPT becomes that app where you're doing these ordering for Kirana store, right? Then how do you adapt to that future, right? Maybe you have, Swiggy's already launched their MCP server, right? Razorpay has launched one recently. A bunch of e-commerce is moving on to chat platforms, right? So that's why I say that, maybe SaaS as we know it, as we're used to, in terms of apps and monolithic architectures or those sort of things, might not be there. But you're right to say that, to take your weaving example, my mother still loves Kanchipuram weave saris and still loves these saris that are done with these expert artisans that can use these machines really well to get the best out of the silk. It's still a craft, right? So just like that, there will be people who learn to survive in the AI craft world, and the best crafted AI products will be made by these people. But it's about upskilling and reskilling.
Great. So there's a guy called Alan Vermeulen. He was the CTO of Amazon.
Right.
And when I joined Amazon, he had just stopped being a CTO because he wanted more hands-on role, and he was a developer in S3 team, AWS S3 team, where I was part of. So very senior guy, and kind of, it was I was just a very young folks, and I was lucky to work with him. But he mentioned something. He said, what, we find this 2,000, 3,000 year old idol made out of some bronze or iron or something like that, right? And it's very valuable, not because we can't replicate it today. Today I can produce 1 million of those. But it's the craftsmanship, what people like to understand is, how did they do it 2,000 years ago?
Right.
Without modern machineries, without, this modern techniques, still they're able to make such beautiful craft. And he's like, imagine that an advanced civilization will find your software.
Right.
And they could make the software they wanted with just a wish. But they would still should be able to appreciate your software.
Makes sense.
That how did they write this software by hand?
Right. Yeah.
Thinking the logic in their head, and they're able to write it, and they should be able to appreciate that software. And that was, I think, for me, a very powerful kind of messaging, that when I'm writing software,
right,
and 2,000 years later somebody discovers my software, they should be impressed by it, just like we are impressed by the artisan idols that are found in like old temples and things like that.
Absolutely. I think the new developers also, like Anthropic's talking about all of their code being written by, Claude code, right? And I just don't want that as an art to die, writing code, as what you're saying, right? People still have to understand what you're writing, what you're deploying. seeing so many security holes coming
Yeah.
now, and it's really worrying out there. So it's not trivial to build reliable software. You still need to have the right checks and balances. You still
Correct.
need to have that craftsmanship layer that
Yeah.
I think both of us are talking about.
And I think that recently there were some, some cloud providers who had outages because somebody pushed some AI written code, and I think there's been like blanket no for in a lot of those providers to say you have to have a human reviewer before you submit any
Correct.
code. And I think that it's going to balance out itself. I don't think we are still ready where uh, AI can just write and ship code. We need human layer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we should be is open to trying new things. I'd love trying like new, if there's a new DevOps tool that works really well and is AI generated, I'd love to try it and I'd like to see and adopt it. But you do it with a healthy amount of suspicion.
Yes.
Right? And you maintain that healthy amount of suspicion. That's true in the whole world, right? And I think, for example, our children, the best type of critical thinking that might survive the age of AI is just to be suspicious. It's just
True.
to keep asking questions and be suspicious, right? My same code, if I ask 3 different times, if I make 3 different calls about my same code, I might get 3 different answers to this, right?
Yes.
But it's worth going through that process to understand, okay, did you really implement it the way that I want, right? So in essence, the best instructions, the best amount of suspicion can make the best AI products, right? So maybe that's something that survives the AI age.
Correct. All right, so let's talk about next about enterprise AI, enterprise agentic AI. Your recent company, Gintic, you have been working with some large e-commerce providers to solve some of their tough challenges using agentic AI. Can you please talk about that?
Sure. So I think enterprise AI is one of those fields where I still feel there is a lot of solutioning to be done, right? You couldn't just spin up a Claude co-work or a ChatGPT equivalent and wish away the problems that an enterprise has. The amount of context that is required for it, the fragment systems that are required, the amount of real-world messiness, edge cases that are there in the processes, and the amount of tribal processes a company has, and enterprise quirks, right, that are there, right, is non-trivial. So I still think that there's huge amount of solutioning. That's why I started Gintic, to understand, to try to address that problem, right? How do I get, your daily troubles of making sure your data is accurate, making sure your ERPs are updated, or making sure your ledgers balance out. All of those things should not be what you're spending your time on. Right now, people are spending 80% of their time on that, and 20% on the strategic thinking, or taking that AI initiative that will move your business forward. I want Gintic to take care of that 80% that you're doing right now, so that you can focus more on building your own agentic AI strategy within your company for your main line of businesses, right? And to think about it strategically, to guide these agentic workers to achieve something that wasn't possible before, right? So what we were talking about as a major problem in the finance sphere is sort of coming to a particular e-commerce, one of the largest e-commerce players, is they have a huge problem with year-end close. And where does that start? That starts with your month-end close not being right. And where does that start? That starts with your accounts payable finally not adding up, right? And your accounts receivable ledger is not matching, right? So when you're talking about your accounts payable, what does that involve? That involves maybe a set of people who are right now doing data entry. These clients get about 40,000 invoices a month.
So you're working with one of the largest e-commerce players in India.
Yes, okay. And basically they get about 40 to 60,000 invoices a month, right, from their various operations, logistics, or marketing, could be outsourcing, payroll, all of that, right?
Got it.
And it all comes in and comes to the center point of the back office, which is finance. So we started by saying, okay, let's solve from the nerve center of the back office, which is finance, and let's solve processes that weren't possible before in the SaaS world. Let me explain why. So, people think that invoice processing automation is really easy, right? See an invoice, the value is there, my PO must have a value 1 equal to 2, and it all goes, right? However, that's not been the case. Right? There's still a significant size of workforce that goes behind it because the world isn't that simple. Right? People submit MISs. People might need different supporting documents for what they submit. All of these are in different formats. People invoice very, very differently, right? And India is a very, very messy world. Nobody's standardized any of these things. And there is a judgment call you need to take. Right? There's a 78-page contract. There are so many rates. There are so many places of SLA, so many places of penalties that could be applied should the service not be provided. All of these calls were not possible to be taken back then. There's just too much context even for a human. Right?
Got it.
It would take a human about 40 minutes to an hour to actually sit down and process a single invoice. Right? We are doing that now in 2 minutes through a multi-agentic AI system. That means that you change none of, it's not transformation. Right? SaaS transformations were a key thing of the past. I think that the new world of enterprise software is where the software transforms to your needs, right? So keep your services the same, keep your vendors the same, no change from their end. They submit all of this fuzzy data to us. We have a multi-agent system that sort of works with, hard tools, MCP servers, RAGs, a RAG database of contracts, for example, right? Could have about 35,000 contracts that you're reading from. To all make this decision on, or make this validation decision on whether we should pass this invoice.
Okay.
So what does that lead to? That leads to faster outcomes, low overheads and costs. So we've reduced the cost per invoice by 50% for our client. And more reliable outputs, less leaks.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and I've heard that there was this guy from Russia who kept sending Google invoices, and they kept paying it, right? And he made like millions of dollars just by sending invoices to Google. So yeah, you're absolutely right that somebody has to check it, and if the humans are not doing a good job, then you have revenue leakage.
It's difficult, right? It's not something humans are. I mean, it's a very, very messy world out there. Right?
Yeah.
As now with these multi-agent systems, you can really crunch that context in a reliable way, right? So ultimately at Gintic, what do we believe in sort of owning outcomes, right? So what does that mean? That means that we take guarantees on how many false positives, false negatives, and how do we pass invoices, right? Which is not a SaaS thing, right? Yeah. SaaS is like, this is a tool, you use it the way it is, there are limits to it. But now we can go to the next phase, back to what I was saying before, right? What your value proposition has changed. It means I'm processing at half the cost, much better accuracy, and I'm owning the outcomes. What would that involve? That involves a ton of actually what I call agentic ops or AI ops. Which is what we use CloudThat as well as our partners to really enable in these enterprises. Because everybody has fragmented systems. There's a CLM, there's an ERP, there's a vendor system that is vendor facing. There are different types of storages. Somebody sends any invoice over a mail, their fresh desk, support, everything, right? How do you make sense of all of that in one coherent sphere?
Got it.
Right? And how do you also have unique deployment needs, right? So enterprises might say that, look, you can keep your proprietary LLM, but we want storage on our cloud, right? So how do you engineer that? How do you DevOps that, right? And how do you do that in a reliable manner, right? So if you've seen recently, look at OpenClaw, right? OpenClaw, the recent poisoning of OpenClaw means that so many different, breaches of security have been there in terms of API keys being leaked, sensitive information being leaked. So how do you prevent that? That's something that cannot happen at an enterprise level, right? So who takes responsibility for that? That's where CloudThat has been one of our top partners in that, and has enabled us to do it while being lean and mean, and bring a lot of that enterprise experience in terms of deploying and data engineering and making those decisions, right? And putting these systems together. So that's the partnership that's led to these outcomes, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Vishal. Thank you so much. So what kind of system do you use usually? What cloud do you use? What kind of, if you can give a bit of a technical overview of how this works, that will be really great.
Sure. So we actually use a multi-agent system called Strands Agents, which is made by AWS on Bedrock, to do this multi-agent orchestration, right? So for example, there's a contract agent and a validation agent. The validation agent asks the contract agent, hey, what are the relevant terms in my contract? And the validation agent looks at, let's say, there are 120 rules that an enterprise could follow that needs to pass before passing an invoice. So it validates against each one of those, checks a tool, does the validation, writes the output in a human readable format, right? Saying that, look, hey, you've, for example, it's able to handle edge cases like, hey, somebody could bill you for Amul Taza, but your PO system has condensed milk. SaaS would fail, right? But an agentic system is able to understand that context, that, it's a brand name, you're able to prompt that out of it, you're able to do that and say, okay, hey, actually, let me not false pause this, or like just reject this for no reason, right? So it's able to make that reasoning decision call through this multi-agent system, right? So we use Bedrock and many models. I think Claude, Haiku, and so on, as well as a few MCP servers that we build ourselves with a fluid schema and architecture. To sort of come up with these proprietary systems that are very, very high reliability and repeatable.
Got it. And so when an enterprise thinks about automating some of their back-end processes like account receivable or some finance function and all that, how should they think about it, right? Let's say there's a CFO right now listening to this and saying, hey, I would also like AI to help me, right? How can they think about kind of solving those challenges?
So I would say, give us the problems which weren't solvable by SaaS. That's where AI shines, right? Like, AI is not going to be, just another filing cabinet, or like, it's not going to be a good use case for that, right? Or just classification or those sort of things which are solved by machine learning in the past. I think AI is going to be where you have fuzzy data. Maybe you need conversational problem solving, and you need reasoning and sort of judgment calls. Right? Those are great areas where AI can help, right? Of course, all of this happens with human in the loop. Right? So there's also AI evaluating itself and saying that, look, a mature AI system would always tell you its own reliability. It will always report its own reliability metrics, and it will always escalate those 5-10% of cases where it's not clear.
Got it.
So that's what I think people should sort of look for in maybe their AI providers is, do you have that maturity of systems? Are you building for humans in the loop? Are you building for reliability? How is your reliability better? See, in a lot of the POCs that we do, you can slick on great UI and you can show something working in a sandbox. But does it break when you do 40,000 invoices a month? And what is your failure rate there? Right? So the best AI systems are those that will figure out this reliability problem, because the number one thing that we're solving for enterprises is that you just put an Excel sheet on a cloud cowork. Two things: one, you don't have reliability. Second, you have a shadow IT problem, which is that your data is just being pushed up there, and nobody's taking responsibility for the outcome. Right?
Got it.
So in enterprise, I would say that is the key thing. That there needs to be more mature solutioning that's happening, and reliability needs to be something that's important. Configuring your business context and your tribal knowledge is something that is non-negotiable.
So, for example, somebody who's kind of listening to this, you said you use Bedrock. Why use Bedrock compared to just going directly and saying, I'm just going to use Claude or OpenAI directly? Why is it better to use through Bedrock?
I think there are a couple of reasons. One is we want to stay model agnostic. See, the world is changing, week on week in terms of model reliability benchmarks that are coming out. And maybe some models are better for some use cases and some for the others. Right? You could say a servum is better for like Hindi or something like that, right? But what is the proportion of Hindi invoices you're getting, right? It's a decision that you can take and make. You want to keep that flexibility as an agentic AI company like us. We want to keep that flexibility to move quickly, to adapt quickly, and use the right model for the right thing. Second thing is, I think in terms of throughput and batch inferencing, I found that Bedrock is really, really good. So in terms of keeping our costs low, right? So another thing is, generally one of the other things that are going to change is, I think, margins in the agentic AI world are going to be slightly different out there, right? Because there's a lot of token costs that is passed through, right? That sort of gets paid to these model providers for their reliability, for their ingenuity. But I think so. optimizing those costs is super important. For example, for deployment in India.
Yeah.
That was one of our biggest winning points, even when compared to the US providers who've had like a 2 years advantage on us, who we had to beat out in our our procurement stage. Is that we still are talking about India, right? India, the costs of doing things are not going to be that expensive. So
correct.
Your level of optimization on when to use hard tools, when to use Agentic AI, how to process these invoices,
correct,
needs to be right on point. That's why we're starting in India. But if we can crack India, I think the US will be...
Absolutely. Because here, I think for a lot of companies, we are competing with a resource which costs 20,000 rupees a month.
Exactly.
And you can very easily use up tokens to replace that 20,000 resource, and you can end up spending 2 lakh a month
exactly
in tokens just to do the work that that resource was doing. Exactly. So I think that in terms of cost, that still is a bit of a concern with India, and in a way, it's maybe an advantage as well.
Sure.
It is harder to replace humans from the loop.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that, and so we have to be very careful about that. Something I think right now the AI space is still in the mode of sort of burning through tokens and getting there. But again, another thing that I would recommend sort of companies evaluating other agentic AI players to talk about is is it sustainable what they're doing?
Yeah.
Right. I don't believe it's sustainable if you're just sort of going to use agentic AI for everything and put your whole context in agentic AI and just hit enter each time, right? I think that's why you need mature solutioning.
Yeah.
Part of the reliability is also the fact that exactly when if there's a math problem, it's an overkill, right? To use agentic AI, it's great tools out there that does it.
So, I mean, it's earlier I used to, for example, if I want to get the address of a restaurant, I would Google it.
Yeah.
That, hey, name of the restaurant, and then it will give you the link. You click on maps and you'll get it. Now I use a ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Now it's an overkill. I'm sure it's going to cost. It's free for me, but it's going to cost a lot more. For the same answer for ChatGPT to process it and to get it back to me, but
and not necessarily as reliable, because what is the source of information there, right? See, one thing we should be healthily suspicious about is that these systems want to please you.
Yeah.
Right? They have been benchmarked and tuned to please you. So they'll say anything that they believe, will please you, right? So in this space, that's why prompt engineering is really, really important, because and sort of not just prompt engineering, I'd go larger to context engineering, right? So if you give it too large a context and too large a prompt, it will ignore what you're saying, right? And it will just say, okay, what's the quickest way to focus on you? And there's that attention problem there, right? So how do you make it small, crunchy, right? And how do you context engineer the hell out of it? I think that's still an art and a craft.
Yeah.
Right? Back to your Weaver's point, that's where I think there's still a huge amount of place for us to play in, right? Which is that you have to be the best AI craftsman out there.
But I also feel that, sometimes it's also a bit faster, because just the other day I was searching for a restaurant and Google just gave me a link, right? And then I open it on the maps, I look at the direction and I said, okay, how long will it take me? And at that time it says, okay, it's going to take you 20 minutes. By the way, I think it's permanently closed. And with the ChatGPT, and I just was curious and I just put the restaurant name and it says, I think it's closed. By the way, here's the address, but I think it's closed. So, it was instantaneous. But you are right about the prompts as well, that I think sometimes I always, you're right that it tends to agree with you a lot more. So it's very dangerous, I think, for people to ask questions about their leadership style or their kind of how to handle their family issues or this or that, because it's like one of the friends who says, no, you are right. It's the other, everybody else around you is wrong. It will never tell you that, no, you need to change, right? You need to kind of button up and you need to kind of buckle up and do some hard work, right? I mean, it will say, oh yeah, it's the other guys who needs to change. So I think you are right that it can be dangerous in that way as well. Perfect. So Vishal, this has been really interesting. There's also some financial use cases that you're talking about.
Sure.
That we can solve with this. Can you? And you said you're working with some other large corporations.
Sure.
For this financial.
I mean, we're working with large quick commerce companies as well to sort of sort out their revenue leaks.
Okay.
Right? As these companies grow on, you're talking about tens of millions of transactions a month. Right?
Yes.
These quick commerce players, and they're often distributed across so many ledgers and so many different softwares. And it's just that humans or even Excel is not able to like handle this context and do this right? So people end up writing off crores a month, right, in their revenue leak and saying, I just don't know where this is. It hasn't come to me. It's not my bank. It's supposed to be there. There's some sales ledger, right? So I think that is another use case which I think Agentic AI could be really strong at. Again, there's a ton of context engineering and tooling that will go behind this. And AI's role can be in that smart matching or reasoning or setting up that meta tooling, which is very cool concept, which is, can you get an LLM to write a tool on the fly?
Yeah.
Right? To do some of your, if a ledger format changes, which often happens with our providers, right? You could just have, suddenly a few new columns that mean everything in the data is not dependent on that. So can you have just-in-time understanding of the format of data, meta tooling, and then sort of a reconciliation that will give you even that sort of human level fuzzy matching and judgment calls that you're taking to make sure that you're not letting these revenue leaks become a systemic problem. Right? So we're working with
that's probably relevant for all enterprises.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think it's an unsolved problem, but I think in the world of agentic AI, if you're able to engineer this right, it is a doable problem. It is something that people should be much more assured of. The fact that their numbers are right. That's what we're in the game of, right? We're in the game of saying that we'll take care of your numbers. We'll make sure that they're right. You take a call on strategy.
Got it. So Vishal, we also have, our audience is, we have a lot of CXOs and engineers and stuff, but we also have some young folks that listen to this who might be looking for the next job, right? So how does what kind of skills are required by somebody to get a job in your organization?
I think some of the core fundamentals of problem solving haven't changed.
Okay.
Right? So I would really encourage you to do more independent thinking, problem solving. Those things aren't changing in the world, right? For you to have that empathy to understand customer problems, to design systems, the system thinking, design thinking, right? Those are all skills that no matter what programming language you're in, no matter what AI IDE you're in, right, will still serve you well when you're getting there to doing your job and executing them, right? So focus on those. Focus on your core systems architecture, understanding why you architect systems that way, what would make a reliable system, what is your core problem solving and independent thinking, critical thinking. As I said, being suspicious about that, right? So I think we've now changed from like testing just knowledge, because we do knowledge tests as a tick, right? But to testing that empathy coefficient, the problem solving coefficient, the architecting skills, right, of our employees. And that's what our engineers are doing, right? All of them, we call them all AI specialists, and they're all going to be doing exactly this. They have to understand a problem, architect a system, and make sure that it delivers for our client.
Got it. Well, Vishal, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing the great work you are doing, and we wish you all the best for this new venture. Thank you so much for having me.
Many years of collaborating with CloudThat, may it continue.
Thank you. Yes, we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being with us for this 4th episode. See you later. Thank you.